Um, hey everyone, thanks for being here. I'm going to talk about this one specific work that we've done, and through the end of it all, I just want to convince you that there's a lot of value in exploring what new interaction patterns are emerging as we kind of deploy these agents. I feel like the last talk was an excellent example of thinking about those real life human AI collaboration frameworks. And if there's anything that you need to take with this, is that you need to get a much better, deeper sense of how multi-agent frameworks are coming together as they're deployed in really messy organizational structures. These agents don't operate in isolation at all. This work was the best paper at Kai. This is with collaborators at Stanford and Google. And you've been hearing a lot of hype around software changing in itself, right? Like we'd love to think about ways in which AI will replace software engineers. And you've got like this whole stack of tools which are coming in to think about like how much code these models are now writing for us. Great. But there's software in itself is a very messy way of working together where PMs, developers, and designers kind of like come together to actually prototype, think about what to build in itself. And there's going to be a lot of judgment that gets exercised over here. This is a messy process that's not just a value function of like how much code you can write, but how you choose problems and how these teams come together in their own respective organizational incentive structures. So we felt this is an important enough question for us to study, which is how do teams now prototype software in this new paradigm of LLMs where a lot of the code is being written for them and the process could theoretically be accelerated. So how do you think about like this new design framework in itself? So us at CI researchers, we love to take like one narrow domain and kind of like prove it out broadly in those spaces. So we kind of like got together multi-stakeholder teams comprising of PMs, UX, and developers together, mostly ML researchers, to tell them that they're designing like this new marketing content creator agent for their clients, which is going to write like a whole bunch of marketing content for them. And they're creating like this generative AI tool, which is run through Google AI Studio and uses Gemini at the backend. Awesome. So we have this idea of like how current roles look like, and that is exactly the prescription that we gave them, that engineers should be thinking about like what kind of like a few short examples to design, how can you like think of metrics and find the right data and so on and so forth. So we gave them like the exact tools that they would be leaning onto as in their current roles, and we wanted to see how these roles are now shifting. And they had like a bunch of guides to kind of like think through product design in these new spaces in itself, which I won't go too deep into. A sneak peek into our findings. One, there's like this really large focus on content in itself. So there's this wrangling that's happening now, which is around the model outputs being reverse engineered for what kind of prompts you should be writing, what kind of agent instructions that you should be developing, what kind of like golden examples that you should be developing in itself. So it's really interesting how like the prototyping paradigm in itself is being reliant on the LLMs that we've built at the get-go, which in itself comes with a lot of priors and biases on like relying just purely on current model design in itself. So thinking more about like how these golden examples have been curated is extremely critical, and this is happening purely through the modality of content. Evals are extremely hard, as we all know, but this shows up even more so when people try to exercise their own domain expertise onto designing these prototypes. So you'd expect that a PM would look at evals in a very monolithic way and a designer would care about very specific functions. That's completely changing. And there's a few key ways in which we like to think about like these silos kind of breaking down. So in an earlier world on the leftmost side of it, you see that expertise was kind of like really guided, that as a designer, you're taking very specific decisions, but that's completely changing because now all of the people in these collaborative teams have a shared surface through prompts and content to be able to wrangle these prototypes in ways that they just couldn't. There's this like big focus on like simulating things being really hard, and that's changing because now you're seeing like engineers in itself simulate how their users might kind of like come through with these LLMs to understand like what these journeys are like. So the workflows in itself for engineers are changing, and the expertise that they have is kind of like getting augmented in ways that you wouldn't have expected. Earlier in a predictive AI world, which we all don't even remember about now, there was a lot of like uncertainty around AI outputs, which is now changing because you're able to wrangle things a lot more through the prompt space. But with it comes kind of like its own challenges because then you're getting like really limited and siloed with what kind of like prompting that you're doing. Technical decisions, again, like completely changed because now nobody gets only engineers don't get to decide what kind of data sets you're using. Those decisions are kind of like getting more and more decentralized in itself. And the same thing is happening with like user-centered decisions, and prototypes are changing from these like really low fidelity kind of like mocks towards actually going towards things which are usable and functional, because you have like these tools at your disposal in itself. So content is the hero of it all. Collaboration is the hero of it all. So if you're designing agents, care about how these agents work in a very, very messy organizational structure where humans and humans come together with multiple agents to kind of like work through the design process in itself. If you want to reach me and talk more, that's my email ID. Thank you so much.